Today I want to find out, would it be possible to beat Fallout New Vegas using only your fists? Now, unless you live in the Dragon Ball Z universe, generally speaking, gun beats fist. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of this challenge with the rules, as I'd really like to start fisting my way through this game as quickly as possible. So there are 3 main rules for this challenge in essence. The first is that I can only use unarmed combat for, well, combat. The second is that I can only use my plain old vanilla fists, no use of boxing gloves, boxing tape, power fists or anything like that. And rule 3 is of course no glitches, cheats or exploits, as they would just completely ruin this challenge. Also, one of my gerbils passed away the other day and it absolutely ripped my still beating heart out of my chest and threw it against a wall. So I'm going to attempt to immortalize her forever by hiding a picture of her in this video. Let me know if you find out where it is. I'm going to try and hide it pretty well. And finally, let's find out, can you beat Fallout New Vegas using only your fists? So to start with, I called myself Fisty because I couldn't think of any funny names. Then the doc passed me a mirror as I let out a shriek about what a hideous monster I looked like. Then it was time to have the complexities of my human nature, as well as my genetic makeup, decided by a vigor tester machine. So to start with, I put strength and endurance up to 10, as they'll definitely help improve my health and improve my damage rating with unarmed combat. I drained perception, charisma and agility, as they're going to be no use to me here. I distributed the rest of my points amongst luck and intelligence. I chose medicine, barter and unarmed as my tag skills. And I only went with heavy-handed for one of the perks that you can choose at the start. It really feels like the initial perks that you can get are like a double-ended sword and that they seem to have some kind of drawback. I decided that I would indeed do the tutorial at the start for the extra experience. I was allowed to shoot these sarsaparilla bottles because I wasn't actually in combat fighting an enemy. Also, I had to check that the gameplay was set to the normal difficulty. Can't be making this too easy now, can we? Then it was time to invade an innocent creature's natural habitat and punch it to death for seemingly no reason. Then, after a brief moment of coming to grips with my own mortality, I fixed Trudy's radio for a bit of extra experience and some caps. This allowed me to level up, where I dumped literally every point I have into my barter skill, as well as taking the Swift Learner perk. Also, if you've got some idea that I'm just going to use the barter skill to get through the ending of the game against Legate Lanius, well, that's not going to happen. Or at least I hope not. If I can beat him using my fists, I will definitely try. I'm writing the script as I go along, but I'm pretty sure I want a boxing match against that guy at the end, so stick around for that. Then it was off to sell literally all the junk that I was given right at the start of the game. You know, to be fair, with scavenging, I could probably just pass the credit check and make my way into New Vegas that way. I sided with Goodsprings in the Ghost Town gunfight. This is because I just prefer it more as a trading hub than anything else. So thanks to the sexy metal armor that I was given, I wasn't really taking a lot of damage. However, I was not dealing a lot of damage either. I found in most cases where I was able to hurt some of the powder gangers, the Goodspring residents were finishing them off for me, which meant unfortunately I was not getting any experience. Moving on to Prim, and the convicts went down after quite a few hits. Again, I still wasn't taking a lot of damage thanks to my metal armor. Or it could have been the fact that I have the endurance of an Olympic athlete. So for the most part the convicts weren't that bad to deal with. However, when it came to the leader, that was a very different story. See, actually taking down the leader was kind of like punching a wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man. It just felt like I was having absolutely no effect on him, and he just bounced back all the harder. A couple of minutes and about 6 stim packs later, and I got him down to this level. Eventually, I was finally able to take him down, at which point I leveled up. I distributed my points between speech and barter, putting the last few points into unarmed, before sleeping in a bed to regain my health. Then it was time to free Deputy Bugle. So at the minute, I really did not have the required skill in speech to convince anyone to become the Mayor of Prim, so I thought I would come back to this later and continue my quest in the search for Benny. And again, the Jackal Gang leader was an absolute nightmare. I'm getting the general theme here that the leaders and the higher level enemies are going to be a lot stronger. That is to say, it's going to take me a significantly longer time to kill them. I can't really say I've noticed this in the past, as using guns often finishes the enemies off fairly quickly, but it almost feels like a lot of the enemies actually do use medpacks and recovery items, which I never noticed before. I would say one thing that I have noticed about this challenge so far that I'm really enjoying is that you actually get the time to notice what your enemies actually look like. Like this leader of the Jackal Gang, for example. Probably a raider, probably an absolute crackhead. And this is how she looks, like a crackhead, because she is. And you know, it's the little details that make these games all the more enjoyable. After a very, very long time and a lot more stim packs, I finally took her down. See, told you, crackhead right there. Well, user of jet. I don't know what you'd call a user of jet. Jethead, maybe? I don't know. Actually, a jethead sounds more like someone who has a serious enthusiasm for flying planes, so probably not that. Tell you what, competition time. Let me know in the comments what you would call someone who takes jet. Obviously there's junkie, but I'm after something a bit more specific to the drug itself. I came across some Jackal Gang members on the way to Nipton. Now, one thing that was becoming ever more clear is that the damage per second that I was doing was just not enough. It was taking absolutely ages just to take down the simplest of enemies, and whilst my armor was pretty decent, I was still burning through a lot of stim packs. After a very, very, very long time, I was able to dispatch the rest of the Jackal Gang as well as the leaders, who for some reason went down easier than the basic Jackal Gang members. I'm not really sure why. On my way into Nipton, I met the lucky lottery winner, who I actually tried to kill. Unfortunately, because I wasn't dealing enough damage, he did manage to escape me. At one point, he somehow became invisible. Then I met Vulpus, who asked me to spread word of the Legion's atrocities. And this is where I noticed something very strange. You see, there are victims from the Legion up on the crosses that are still alive, and yet a few of them were skeletons. Like, how would that even work? In order to be a skeleton, they would have to have been up there for an extremely long time. So unless the Legion is the supplier for the White Glove Society, I really don't understand how this happened. I came across a metal armor wearing clad Viper gunslinger on the way to Novak. Now the problem here was we were both pretty well armored and we were both using melee combat. This fight took an extremely long time as well as wasting a lot of my med packs. Once in Novak, I used Manny's computer to find that Benny had gone to Boulder City. Jeannie May got her head blown off, which allowed me to level up again. I put every point I had into my barter skill, as well as picking the educated perk, giving me 3 extra skill points every time I level up. I nearly got absolutely decimated by some raiders on the way to Boulder City, and had it not been for the help of some mercenaries following a travelling caravan, I would have probably been killed. I leveled up in Boulder City, where I distributed my points between speech and the unarmed skill. I didn't yet have the required speech skill to do what I wanted here, but I could always come back later. And speaking of which, upon approaching Freeside's Eastgate, I was indeed able to level up. I poured all of my points into my speech skill, and then took the second perk for Swift Learner. Then I was able to convince the Great Khans to come out peacefully, as well as convincing the NCR to let the Great Khans leave without a fight. This gained me acceptance with both factions. Now this might come in useful later, as I might be severing the alliance between the Great Khans and Caesar's legions. I was able to pass a credit check which allowed me into the strip, and this is where I finally met Mr. House. I was also able to barter for a better deal to get the platinum chip. Benny, being the treacherous snake that he is, tried to double cross me, but with a combination of wearing the Vault 21 jumpsuit and alcohol, I was able to raise my speech skill enough to convince him to let me leave. Now, for the majority of the Fallout challenges, I would say that Yes Man is definitely the best way to go. and he's definitely where I'm going to go in this case. So I gained so much experience here that I actually leveled up twice. The first time I leveled up after meeting Yes Man, I put the majority of my points into Unarmed with a little into Speech. And the second time I leveled up, I distributed my points once again between Unarmed and Speech, this time taking the third perk for Swift Learner. Then it was off to Prim for a quick mop-up of a previous quest. Now that I had the required speech skill, I was able to convince the NCR to look after Prim. I made a bet with the man that I could get to the Nellis airbase before he promptly exploded and I stole all his caps. So the boomers are really quick and easy to get on side. First I had to complete the ants misbehaving quest. Now the ants were pretty strong and I wasn't doing a lot of damage. However, in a one-on-one situation I was able to dispatch the ants without too much trouble. It took a really long time to both find and neutralize the ants because I wasn't doing any damage. But having completed the quest, I did level up where I put every single point I had into medicine. I gained some more fame from the boomers by listening to their history. Then I stole some broken solar arrays from the NCR, which I then used to fix the boomers' solar farm. This made me idolised with the boomers, which was pretty sweet. Then, after playing Cupid for Jack, I was able to level up again. I divvied up my points between Speech and Barter, and then I took the Fight the Power perk. I'm going to be fighting the Legion or the NCR at the end anyway, so this will be useful. And finally, I raised the bomber out of the lake without a rebreather because I couldn't be bothered to find the parts. And just like that, we had boomer sponsorship. So I was absolutely certain that I wanted the Great Khans to break up with Caesar's Legion. Unfortunately, this meant a walk through Cazador Canyon. And to put it simply, I had about as much chance of beating the Cazadors as a Skyrim player has at beating Morrowind, so I basically just had to run through there as quickly as I can and try not to die. I was even useless at dealing with the giant mantis. The unarmed combat skill is absolutely terrible if you don't have anything on your fists. Eventually I made it to the Big Daddy himself. I had to convince the rest of the Great Khans to break from Caesar. It turns out the drug addicts are very susceptible to persuasion. I found Carl's journal, which enraged Papa Khan. Just an idea. If you're living with people you don't like, don't write down how much you hate them and think they're savages, and then leave it out in the open where anyone can find it. I've been kicked out of so many cults that way. With Caesar's emissary firmly removed, it was time to go and convince Melissa. Now, to get to Melissa, you have to cross the quarry, which is filled with death claws. So I knew obviously that I would never be able to actually fight the death claws. However, I did have a few attempts at running or sneaking past them. I tried many times, and here is a few of my valiant efforts. However, I quickly realised that at this time, I would not be able to do this quest. With no way presently forward, I decided that it might be possible to return here at a higher level with a bit more health and maybe some better armour. So I decided to do the Brotherhood of Steel quest line instead. First I acquired Veronica as a companion as it would make it easy to get into the Brotherhood of Steel bunker. Elder McNamara had me looking for some Brotherhood of Steel corpses, and Veronica started killing everything in sight, which gained me quite a bit of experience. I wasn't really sure how I felt about this as I didn't want to use companions, but I kinda needed her. Leveling up, I distributed the majority of my points into Unarmed with a little bit into Barter. Then, after reporting the scout findings back to McNamara, I decided it might be time to once again reach Melissa. I could use Veronica to deal with the baby Deathclaw, no problem, but the other Deathclaws she would not be able to stand up against. I had actually intended to use her as a distraction for the Deathclaws so that I could run to Melissa. Unfortunately, Veronica died too easily. I could use Veronica to deal with the baby Deathclaw, no problem, but the other Deathclaws she would not be able to stand up against. I had actually intended to use her as a distraction for the Deathclaws so that I could run to Melissa. Unfortunately, Veronica died too easily. So today we're going to find out, can you beat Fallout New Vegas using only Veronica? No, I'm joking of course, but that is seriously how this started to feel like it was going. And I'll be totally honest, I didn't like it. I don't like relying on allies. For the time being, however, I pushed on. I passed a speech check which allowed me into Fiend territory, where I was able to collect one of the items the Brotherhood had asked for. Then I leveled up and I put all of my points into barter. Now, this is because I was just hedging my bets. If I can't actually defeat the Legate at the end, I am going to have to use barter to end the game. I am going to try and get as many stim packs as I possibly can, because I actually do want to punch that guy until his head explodes. But if I can't, it is going to have to be the barter route. I also took the Stone Wall perk, giving me +5 to damage resistance against physical attacks. This will definitely help in reduced damage against the Deathclaws. I battled my way through Vault 22 against a few Spore carriers. This wasn't really too much trouble. After I'd collected what I needed to for the Brotherhood, I decided to go buy some strong combat armor. Then the Brotherhood asked me to go to Black Mountain. Now, I actually fought a lot of Centaurs on the way to Black Mountain, including Mo, which I was able to punch to death. And to be totally honest, the super mutant brutes of Black Mountain were reasonably simple to take down. Sure, it took a long time, but they weren't doing a lot of damage to me, so it wasn't too bad. I also found that now I had the ability to actually knock opponents down, which I didn't seem to have before. And apart from using a lot of stim packs, the brutes weren't really that much of a problem until I got to the Nightkin. By then, I was already pretty much spent of med packs. I leveled up, distributing my points between barter, speech, and unarmed. But unfortunately, I was completely out of supplies, so I had to run away from Black Mountain for the time being. By the time I left Black Mountain for the first time, I had damaged limbs as well as radiation poisoning. It had not gone well. Upon my return, I found I was actually able to deal with the Nightkin, now having enough stim packs. However, I did get blown up by the Nightkin with the missile launcher called Annabelle. But because I had combat armor, they weren't doing too much damage to me, although I wasn't doing too much damage to them, but I could knock them down. Now, in terms of Fallout New Vegas, I'm actually pretty new to the game. I ran through it for the first time like 2 years ago, I think, and there's so much I haven't actually done in this game, one of which being Black Mountain. I haven't even been here yet. So obviously I'd heard about the radio broadcast between Rhonda and Tabitha, but I was not expecting what I found. So far as I could tell, Rhonda and Tabitha are the same people. I think that's how it is anyway, because it sounded like the Tabitha character was doing two separate voices. Either way, it was absolutely hilarious. And you know, to be honest, I kind of hoped that Tabitha would have been a little bit stronger, as she is the boss or leader of Black Mountain. You would think she would have been really strong, but I guess not. So, after finally getting the Brotherhood on side, my final objective for now would be to get the Great Khans on side, and I thought I knew how to get through the Deathclaw Canyon. Step 1 was to buy an insane amount of medical supplies. I was also able to sell quite a lot of expensive equipment that I've picked up. So it took me 4 minutes to get through the Deathclaws with repeated saves. Essentially what I did was used a stealth boy. And essentially what I would do was just save the game every so often when I felt I was in a really good position. Eventually, of course, the stealth boy did run out and I was forced to just run the rest of the way. But by that point, it was only baby Deathclaws that I had to deal with. And then at long last, I was finally able to reach Melissa and convince her to tell Papa Khan to break his alliance with Caesar, which he gladly did. But first I had to escape the quarry. I was able to outrun the Deathclaws, eventually having to deal with some fire geckos, which allowed me to level up. I distributed my points between speech and medicine, and then I took the piercing strike perk. Finally, I was able to return to Papakan, and just like that, no more alliance with Caesar. Then I returned to Yes Man to render judgment on the other tribes. So the Protectrons under the fort were actually really easy to deal with. I'm not really sure why they're so susceptible to hand damage, but I wasn't complaining. I also managed to run past a lot of enemies, and I managed to upgrade the Securitron army. Escaping the vault, I put my unarmed skill finally up to 100. Then I fisted Benny to death. Okay, you know what? I had to make that joke at least once. Pretty low hanging fruit on the humour front there, but never mind. Also, I stole his jacket as I planned on using this at the end, as it provides a bonus to speech and barter. Then it was time to overthrow Mr. House. I punched him a few times, which somehow made him explode. Then I installed Yes Man, took the override chip from the Eldorado power station and ran like hell. Oh, in case anyone's wondering, I also completely ignored President Kimball. Then all I had to do was make sure that I was adequately supplied with stim packs, as well as having some decent armor for the fight ahead. The boomers did what the boomers do best, and I was able to convince the Brotherhood to take a hike. And unfortunately, there was just no way that I could take down the Legate by actually punching him to death. He had too many Praetorian Guard around him, so I had to put on Benny's suit, and I was able to persuade him to leave without a fight. I also persuaded Yes Man to throw General Oliver over the dam and beat Fallout New Vegas using only my fists. So this challenge was really up and down. To start with, it was very easy. Then it got quite difficult, and I had to use Veronica, which I hate doing. And for some reason, things got a lot easier. I think it's because I selected a perk that gives me 15 points extra unarmed damage, plus the ability to knock opponents down. But this challenge was super fun, and I really enjoyed it. I look forward to doing more in the future. It is kind of the way this channel has gone now, so I'm really looking forward to doing more challenges in the future. Please like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Leave any comments if you do have any, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.